Senior officer cover duties came around more often these days, about one weekend in 3. 20,000 new police officers? It was a joke. Look at the murder squad at Lake Central. They were at a little over half the strength that had originally been promised when Freeman was setting it up, almost 2 years ago now. Central was a key station in the county's police service, and it required someone of a detective inspector's rank or the uniform equivalent to be on call. There were not enough to go around, even though Freeman herself would take her turn. This weekend it was D.I. Tirek, and Tom Green was determined to make the most of it. He was taking down the frames that had supported this year's crop of runner beans. It had been a successful year, despite the long dry spell in August. The tricky job of running a proper standpipe down to the vegetable garden last year had paid off, and they had bags of beans stored in the chest freezer, and some salted ones in jars, much to the sarcastic delight of his teenaged offspring. The secret with a veg garden is feeding it, and all these beds had had proper farmyard manure within the past 2 years, except that one, he looked over at it, which will provide next year's new potatoes. Potatoes don't like a lot of manure. It causes them to scab and spoils the look of them. Green considered himself a half-decent gardener, the make-do-and-mend sort, telling himself he only bothered to save a bit on the weekly grocery bill, but the neighbours on either side, looking enviously over their fences, would have given a different account of the matter. It was a tidy, organised, and productive plot, and if you'd shown pictures of it to some of the detectives from Lake Central and told them the garden belonged to one of their colleagues, not a few of them would have guessed first time that it belonged to their detective inspector. They had bought this house 10 years ago now, a former council house, built in the times after the war when homes fit for heroes meant something. It was semi-detached, had large rooms, and an absurdly long garden. They'd walked down here on the day of the viewing, and Green had had a vision of the future. He saw lawns, swings for the children, dahlias and roses, fruit bushes and a vegetable plot, even though it was a wasteland. Jill had stared at it, then at him, and said, "Oh, that's that then." Looking back towards the house, he could see her approaching now. It was too early for the usual mug of tea, and then he realized she was carrying his mobile phone. He frowned, and as she neared him, she said, "Sorry, he was a bit insistent. Someone called Whittaker from Norwich?" Green took the phone and gave his name. He knew who this was. The two of them had spoken about a month previously, though they'd never met in person. Whittaker was a detective inspector based at Bethel Street in Norwich.